Welcome to the Institute of Self-Worth, a curriculum for life designed to teach principles of self-worth. Let's join Pastor Vic Porter as he shares on the horse and the ship.
Today we're going to be teaching on the horse and the ship out of James chapter 3. The horse and the ship is basically a message on faith. But we're going to take a different type of look at this, and we realize that faith is an extremely important part of our lives, but faith is a lot more than just our confession. It's an issue of the heart, and we're going to take a look at that. And while we're considering James chapter 3, before you get over there, go with me to the 19th Psalm, if you would. Psalms 19 and verse number 14. And we've taught on this verse earlier in the Institute of Self-Worth in one of the lessons, but let's look at it again. It says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." A lot of times we have a perception that faith is only about our words. Your words and my words are extremely important. But our words are formed from the meditation of our heart. Your heart, once again, is your mind, your will, your emotions, and then your emotions consist of your thoughts and your feelings. So how you renew your mind will begin to establish your heart. If you renew your mind to Gunsmoke, a particular TV program, then that's what you will know about. If you renew your mind to healing, then that's what you will know about. If you renew your mind to performance, judging people and making sure that they do everything right, then that will be the product that comes out of your heart and out of your mouth, and you will begin to operate in that capacity of your life. But he says here, he says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable." Your words simply are coming from your heart, and what is in your heart is that you have given thought to and meditated on. And then he says, if they are acceptable, this is Vic's translation, if the words of your mouth, because of the proper meditation of your heart, are acceptable, then he is your strength and your Redeemer. Now, with that in mind, go over to James chapter 3. James chapter 3, and that's where we're going to begin. And the springboard scriptures of the horse and the ship is going to be verse number 3 and 4. And it's possible we could have named this something different, but whenever you say the horse and the ship, people understand basically what chapter you're in and what it's going to say. And so in James chapter 3, what we're going to do, I want you to take and write this down. It's broken up into 3 sections. Section 1 is James 3, 1 through 6. And that deals with the power of the tongue. The power of the tongue. The second section is James chapter 3, verses 7 through 13, and that deals with the power to control the tongue. The power to control the tongue. And then in James chapter 3, verse number 14 through 18 is section 3, and that deals with learning how to speak. Learning how to speak. Now, one thing that I think is real important that we need to establish, and we'll say this probably several different ways, but there's a lot of folks that think that whenever they learn about the message of confession and the power of our tongue, they think that they have arrived. But you know what I found over the years? Everyone on the face of the earth has the power of the tongue. We can take our tongue and we can cut people up or heal them, minister grace to them or minister law to them. We can love people, we can hate them. We can be bitter or sweet, one of the two. And it all manifested itself out from our heart, and then it goes through our voice, through our tongue, and out into the air. And then those words are looking for soil into the hearts of other people to begin to grow and reproduce after their kind. Now in James chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, let's read those verses. If you got your Bible with you. He says, "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect or mature man, and able also to bridle the whole body." James chapter 3 and verse 3. "Behold, we put bits in the horse's mouth, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth." Verse number 5, "Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth." And then verse number 6, "And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell." Now I'd like for you to take and underline some words. In verse number 2, I want you to underline is able also to bridle the whole body. Able also to bridle the whole body. Verse number 3, I'd like for you to underline the word bits and turn their whole body. Verse number 4, I'd like for you to underline the word ships and the word helm and whithersoever the governor listeth. And then in verse number 6, I want you to underline the words world of iniquity and the course of nature. Those are key areas of chapter 1 or chapter 3 in verses 1 through 6. Now let's look at verse number 1. In the horse and the ship, James chapter 3, verse 1. He said, "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation." Basically what this verse is saying is that the person that is ministering or teaching, the preacher that is standing behind the pulpit, he has a tremendous responsibility. And the responsibility that he has is that the words that he speaks and the way that he speaks them are going to affect all of the hearers. I take what I'm doing on camera and in person when I go and speak or when I speak at my church. I take what I'm doing very, very seriously. And the reason that I do is because I'm going to be held accountable for what I tell you. To the people that's listening to me right now, what I'm telling you is that I have a great responsibility to teach you as accurately as I possibly can. I'm not trying to infer that I know everything, because God knows that that's not the case. But my attitude and the spirit in which I'm saying these things are going to have an effect on your life, and I know that. And I will stand before the Lord for not only what I've said, but how I've said it. And I want you that's listening, I want you to receive the Word and the Spirit of the Word. If I get over into my own attitude or a negative situation in my, something that I have experienced, I pray that you won't receive that. But I do pray that with the proper motive of which I speak, I pray that you receive that. Now he says here, he said, my brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. He's simply saying that the person that's standing behind the pulpit has a great responsibility to minister the truth to the people. Now, we don't have the responsibility of making it work. We do have the responsibility of providing the word to you. I don't have the responsibility of your circumstances, but I do have the responsibility of your soul, your mind, your will, and your emotions. And what I share, I want it to affect the way that you think, the way that you believe, and ultimately the way that you speak and the way that you act. That's what the word will do. Now let's look at verse number 2. He said, for in many things we offend all. But if any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect or mature man, and able to bridle the whole body. This is an interesting verse here. You know, we have the ability to offend people in lots of ways, and by our actions, by our expression. But then he says here, but if any man offend not in word, that man or woman is a mature person. In other words, it is possible that you and I come to a place that we don't offend people with our words. Now, that takes some doing. And you know what I found over the years? I've been ministering for 33 years across the country and overseas in different places. But the one thing that I've found that I think is extremely important is over a process of time, your heart begins to change and you begin to realize that this is not about you, it's all about Jesus. And my responsibility is the messenger to preach the message. It's not the messenger that sets people free, it is the message that sets people free. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, as long as the message of truth and grace is released from within the container or the vessel that God has chosen or chooses to use in ministering to people. Now he says, for in many things we offend all. But he says, if any man, I'm just going to give you Vic's translation. When we begin to get a hold of the truth and we come to a place that we are not offending people by our words, we have come to some sort of maturity. Now, I'd like for you to hold your place there and go over to Colossians chapter 3, Colossians chapter 4. And I want to share this scripture with you, then I'm going to show you the difference between someone that's mature and someone that isn't mature. In verse number 5 of chapter 4 of Colossians, Paul writes, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. That you may know how you ought to answer every person that you come in contact with. How do you answer people? He says here, when you walk in wisdom towards those that are without, that's talking about the unsaved. He said, you are redeeming their time. You are redeeming their time. And then he says, here's how you redeem their time. He says, by letting your speech always be with grace. And the only way that your speech can be with grace is when your heart is established with grace in Hebrews chapter 13:9. When your heart is established with grace, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. And whenever your heart is established with grace, then your speech will be that of grace. And Paul says, and then also James says, that we're dealing with a mature person. Because see, whenever you become a person of substance, when you begin to become a person that speaks grace, you're beginning to become a person that is denying yourself, denying your offenses, denying your will, so that other people can and will be able to receive the things from God.
Thank you for joining Pastor Vic Porter today. For more information on the Institute of Self-Worth, please visit our website at www.instituteofselfworth.com. May God's richest blessings be yours.